Hello, I'm delighted to be able to seize this opportunity to say thank you to the Royal Air Force. And by the Royal Air Force, I mean the people in it. In particular, my instructors, my flight commanders, my squadron commanders, station commanders, and last but not least, the many friends, all of whom had a huge influence on me during my very happy 19 years in the Royal Air Force. So my life started in Ireland, the middle of the country, as far away as you can possibly imagine from airports, and therefore I have no idea why I decided by the age of 8 or 9 or so that I wanted to be an airline pilot. But I focused all my education and everything I could do was all dedicated to ensure that I would end up in the left-hand seat of an airliner. I was born in a family of 7 children. As I said, in the middle of Ireland, the town was called Athlone, and there's a high street. That cafe there is where us young boys used to hang out right into our teenage years. Everything was absolutely normal until October 1965, when I was woke up in the middle of the night by my father, who used to tell me that my mother had just had a stroke. She was rushed off to Dublin, and brain surgery ensued, and amazingly she survived, but she did take a long time to fully recover. She did actually live on 35 more years, so she did make a complete recovery in the end. But over the following months, when she came home, as she got better, my father got problems with rheumatoid arthritis, and in October 1966, he died. So I had to take time off school then, and the result of all this was that when it came to doing my leaving certificate exam in June of 1967, I got the equivalent of 7 GCSEs, and unfortunately I didn't get the 2 A-level equivalents that I hoped. Now this restricted me therefore to applying to be a pilot to the Royal Navy and the Royal Air Force. And I applied to them both on the same day, and I did the aptitude test at Biggin Hill for the Royal Navy, and they offered me a fixed-wing pilot, which of course I accepted. And as I was about to join them, there was a supplementary defence review, and the carriers were cancelled, and they informed me that I could come as a helicopter pilot, but no longer fly fixed wing. And I didn't like that idea, so I ended up joining the Royal Air Force, sadly not as a pilot, but as a navigator. So I joined the Royal Air Force in June of 1968, and the records I'm going to be reading from I got recently. That's the pilot paperwork. So there's a picture of me there in June of 1968 as I became a cadet. Now the training went well. This is me taking astro shots on the Domini at Stradishow, and I got my wings in November of 1969, my navigator's wing. I then went to 360 Squadron at Cottesmore as a joint Navy and Air Force Squadron, where we did electronic warfare training for all 3 services. Now, for a navigator, it was the dullest possible boring job, because there was almost no navigation to be done. And to give you an idea how little work we had to do, the navigator leader generated a job for us, which was to log a TACAN fix, that's a range and bearing fix, every 6 minutes. Mind-numbing or what. So I had not a lot of job satisfaction, but I did learn about electronic warfare training, and I had a lot of things to make up on the ground. Now, in November of 1970, the Royal Air Force allowed us to live out of the officers' mess. So together with 2 other friends, we rented a cottage 3 miles from the airfield, and there I started to really learn what it was like to be a lad. The very first thing that I noticed was within 3 weeks I managed to get rid of my cherry, and now I changed from being a boy to being a man, and started to grow up. And I had absolutely wonderful fun. Absolutely fabulous 3 years that completely counterbalanced the boredom of the flying. So I'm going to quote from this document, which is my first annual, the last annual confidential report from my first squadron. And I'll read a few words of the first officer's report. His name was Squadron Leader Hughes. Talking about me, he said, "He has not, however, gone out of his way to shine in the performance of either his primary or secondary duties. He gives me the impression of being quite happy to enjoy the life of a young RAF bachelor without much thought for the future. With increasing maturity, he should improve in this respect. I do not, however, consider that he has any potential to reach senior rank." So it's a bit of a write-off of my career. But I'd like to quote from the Royal Naval Commander, who I think had more foresight. He said, unlike the first reporting officer, I am not convinced that Mannion lacks potential for senior rank. It is too early to judge, and I have amended the assessment to reflect this potential. So thank you, George Oxley. Now, I hadn't asked for a posting to the Hercules, but completely out of the blue, I got posted to Lynham. And this turned out to be the best, most important career step that ever happened to me. Because at Lynham, or at Thorney Island, first of all, the instructor, the ground school instructor that influenced me hugely was a guy called Dolly Gray. And I came away from Thorney Island with a clear ambition to be above average, that's a B category, as soon as possible. And I managed to get B category in about 11 months after I arrived at Lynham on 36 Squadron. I then had a wonderful first tour there and got posted across to 47th Squadron Special Forces. Now, all during this time, I put in applications to cross train as pilot. 3 of them while I was at Lynham, and all 3 of them were rejected. But I did have a wonderful tour in 47th Squadron, and the report of Squadron Leader Graham Ogilvie, who was my flank commander, Wing Commander Kevin Fitzpatrick, Squadron Commander, and George Hardstaff, the Station Commander, all recommended me for promotion. So I made considerable progress. And I got posted to Cranwell on a ground job, expecting that this would be my promotion tour. Now, I was only there a few weeks when it came to my notice that the job I was doing was likely to be not disbanded, but what they call disestablished. It was going to be an establishment change. So I thought, this is another opportunity. I was now nearly 31. I thought, this is another opportunity to try a pilot application, on the basis that my wife and 2 young children had just moved up to Cranwell with me. We left the house at Lynham, and the other good reason was that we're now already at the pilot training base. So I went into the Group Captain Richard Miller, armed with my letter of application. Now, another good fortune here was that Richard Miller had been my wing commander on my first Victory Squadron, and he had processed a previous application. And I remember at that time him saying to me, if this is rejected, keep trying, because I've known several navigators who became pilots, and all of them made it in the end. So here I am going into Richard Miller's, Group Captain now, Richard Miller's office, and pull out from my briefcase his application letter, which he read carefully, and then he said, you do know this will have a hugely detrimental effect on your career. So can you put in a paragraph acknowledging that you know it will have a bad effect on your career? Which I did. And he also said, and we will send it direct to the Air Secretary's Department. We will avoid going through the normal channels because the Deputy Commandant, the Commodore, he will reject it, and certainly Air Marshal Blackley, the Commandant of Cranwell, will certainly reject it as well. So that's what he did. And a few weeks later, I phoned up the desk officer at the Barnwood, and I said, how am I doing about the pilot application? He said, I can't tell you that. So I said, I know you can't tell me that, but I need to let the Open University know what my choice for courses are for next year. So he paused for a moment, and he said, if I were you, I wouldn't apply for a course for next year. So that was a wink and a nod that I was on my way to being piloting. And sure enough, a few weeks later, I was told, and a few weeks after that, I started at Swindon on the Chipmunk, and did 14 hours with the Chipmunk, followed by the 1 Squadron at Cranwell. Now, I loved flying the Jet Provost Mark V, so much so, and again I should thank my wonderful Royal Navy, as it turns out, instructor whose name was Tim French, and sadly Tim got killed in a mid-air collision when he did an exchange tour with the United States Navy. But he was a wonderful instructor for me, because what was good about Tim had just come from helicopters, so he wasn't very good at navigation at 300 knots that we were doing in the Jet Provost. So he was learning from me how to navigate, and I was learning from him how to fly and how to fly formation. So we got on like a house on fire, and he was a very, very motivational instructor. So thank you, Tim. Rest in peace. Another thing I would say about the Jet Provost is that on one afternoon in about the springtime, March time or so of 1981, so I was halfway through the course, I was doing my aerobatic sequence just to the east of Bourne in Lincolnshire. And I was utterly thoroughly enjoying myself. And I remember at one stage, I realised that here I am doing something I absolutely love and that I was quite good at, and getting paid for it. And out of sheer happiness, my eyes just welled up with tears. And I had to put the airplane level, calm myself down, and just fly back to the Cramble and do a few service to land. It was just sheer fantastic. Now, at some stage around this time, I mentioned to one of my instructors that I fancied going back to line and to be a co-pilot in the Hercules. And I was left in no doubt that I should never ever be heard saying such a thing again. That whether I liked it or not, I was going to go down the fast jet route. So before I knew what, I was there on my way at Valley. And again, I had a great fortune. My instructor at Valley was a guy called Rod King. And Rod was hugely influential on me. He worked me very hard, and I worked very hard for Rod. And as a result, I flew the Hawk really well. I got to know the airplane really well, and I was very confident in it. And again, a very similar thing happened in the Hawk. I was doing my aerobatic sequence over the Plain Peninsula in Anglesey, just south of Anglesey. And again, this time I didn't burst into tears, but I did have to stop and just remind myself, don't be too happy, but you are having a ball, getting paid for this, having a fantastic time. And then the next course I did then was down at Chivanor, where we learned how to drop bombs in the Hawk. And despite being very comfortable with the Hawk, that without question was the most difficult course that I found in my whole pilot training time. We would just get good at something, and then you go on to another phase. And you had to also develop this sense of controlled aggression. You know, learn to fight the airplane, learn to drop bombs, learn to shoot guns, and generally become develop the attitude of a fighter pilot. I've just skipped on there one. That's me getting my wings at Valley, and I think my grin says it all. Yeah. Now, at the end of the Chivanor course, I had a bit of a crisis of confidence, and again, great instructors there who coaxed me on, and I expressed an interest to go to this airplane. And I'm delighted to say that I was the first tourist accepted to go on to the Tornado. It was fantastic because the airplanes were absolutely brand new, and we were on the third squadron to form, 27th squadron. I did a wonderful, happy 2.5, maybe 3 years on that squadron. During that time, we participated in bombing competition. Now this is my navigator Roger Bennett and me. We were doing very well in the run-up to the competition. In fact, we came second in the list. But I was a bit disappointed, to put it mildly, that I wasn't selected to be part of their team. And I went in and had a discussion with the boss and made my feelings absolutely clear. And again, credit and thanks to John Grogan, he explained to me that he couldn't put a first tourist on the team when he had squadron leaders and so on, much more experienced, who would be jockeying for my seat. So Mal Prizik, an ex-buccaneer squadron leader, he took my seat. And while they were flying in the competition, I was ground-based, spending my time out on the bomb scoring units and watching how the airplanes were doing. And in many ways, I was acting as a kind of a spy, really. I had three people with me. But we would report back to the squadron what tactics worked really well, and we would develop new tactics accordingly. And the result was they almost did a complete sweep of the prizes. In credit again to John Grogan, knowing how disappointed he was, he kept me current. So when we would come back at 2-weekly periods, he would get me to fly. And these are both taken at Ellsworth Air Force Base in Rapid City, South Dakota, flying low level one day and air-to-air refueling. And then to my delight, at the end of that, John Grogan said, "Would you like to fly one back across the Atlantic?" And thank you, John Grogan, for having that faith in me. So I did fly one back across the Atlantic, air refueling, obviously. When I was finished that tour, I got a job instructing at Cottesmore. And while I was there, again, I was delighted that I was told that I'd been given a Commander-in-Chief's commendation for my work during the bombing competition. So again, thank you, John Grogan. I had a wonderful last year at Cottesmore, and that's me on my last flight, just after the last flight, I should say. And again, we'll go straight now to just read the last report at the end of this tour at Cottesmore. This is by Wing Commander Rimmer, who was the chief instructor. He said, "I endorse in total the remarks and observations of the first reporting officer. I have found Flight Lieutenant Mannion to be energetic and pragmatic in all that he does. Despite his imminent departure from the service, his loyalty and measured enthusiasm are beyond question. As an aviator, Flight Lieutenant Mannion is utterly reliable, and despite his short time at TTE, he has quickly adapted to the complexities of our training environment. His option to leave is indeed a significant loss for our force, who will also be hard to replace as a TTE instructor." So, as we approach the end, may I remind you that this boy had a difficult teenage years, had a lot of growing up to do, and got great help from his mates in the Air Force to develop himself, and finally achieved his ambition by becoming, first of all, a captain with British Airways, and later finishing his career in 2 different Indian airlines, flying the 777. So thank you again to everybody, the Royal Air Force, within the Royal Air Force, that made this young boy what he is.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Thanks.